Welcome, compadres. Welcome to another episode of Due Date, the true legend of Dusty Cantina, gunslinger, librarian. This time, we're doing Chapter 3. Dusty plays cards and discusses a book. Folks say that Dusty weren't one to make a fuss just to make a fuss. So, after drinking Seymour under the table, she just sat there in the saloon sipping her whiskey, and a snort and a snore from the man she drank under the table, coupled with her calm demeanor, seemed to signal to all the other folks in the establishment that it was time to commence to going back to whatever they was in the habit of doing before she got there. From back where the remaining book club fellers came the sounds of cards being shuffled. Weren't no ordinary riffle either, but a full-on cutting bridge and then a waterfall. The man who done the fancy shuffling flashed an even quicker smile and touched the brim of his hat in a kind of salute. Perhaps the lady would like a hand or two of poker, said the card-shuffling gent, a friendly game under more amiable conditions to continue this discussion and welcome her to this, our fine establishment. Who's asking? Growled Dusty. Now where are my manners? Replied the card shuffler. Name's Handsome Dan, he said, without an ounce of modesty. This here's Forgettin Henry, and on the far side there is Lonesome Paco. Handsome Dan indicated each of his friends with a nod. We're the founding, and at present the only upright members of the Dry Gulch Reading and Drinking Book Club. Dusty glanced over, shrugged her shoulders, and made her way over to the table. Handsome Dan continued to shuffle his cards as Dusty sat down and took the one vacant seat at the table, the one formerly belonging to Seymour Seamless, the feller currently residing under the table. When Handsome Dan made to start dealing, she put out her hand, and he paused. Don't bother with those, Dusty said. She reached under her weather-worn coat, and the men at the table flinched a little at the sight of the holster just visible on her hip. She wasn't pulling her gun, not this time. Instead, Dusty pulled something much smaller from her waistcoat pocket. I happen to have an unopened deck right here we can use, she said, and tossed the pack onto the table. Don't go into a new saloon without one. Only a person who knew what to look for could see the grin on Handsome Dan grow a little thin at this. Nonetheless, he smoothly scooped up the new deck, broke the seal, and began shuffling again. The game is 5-card draw, no limit, and the book is Consuela, Bandit Queen of California, Dan said smoothly. I'm familiar with them both, said Dusty. Of course, friend, just a friendly game to welcome this lady stranger to these parts, said Dan, as he smoothed a fan of newly shuffled cards on the felt card table with a smile that flashed brighter than the underside of a fish plucked from its stream by a red-tailed hawk in spring. Shall we set the ante at a double eagle? Dusty and the two other players, Lonesome Paco and Forgettin Henry, anteed up without comment. As Handsome Dan finished dealing the cards, he asked casually, "Say, stranger, who do you reckon will win the hand of the feisty firebrand, Consuela, the Bandit Queen of California? And why don't you start off with the betting?" Dusty was studying her cards and took a moment to fold them together in a neat stack and set them face down on the table before she answered. "I like the chances of that Grant Thornton," said Dusty as she tossed another of her gold eagles into the pot. The table erupted faster than a red-tailed hawk catching sight of a slow-moving rabbit in a snowdrift. "Grant Thornton!" exclaimed Forgettin Henry. "Why, he was the one what moved out west to escape the shame so great it cannot be mentioned. I'll see that," he added as he tossed in some chips. "A shame so great," continued Lonesome Paco, "that if anyone were to know it, thinks Grant, that would forever brand Grant as one unworthy of love. I'm in. The pot grew by the requisite amount, so Grant must forever run, ever fearing the day his past will catch up with him," said Handsome Dan, "forever doomed by social convention never to speak of that which, if spoken, would bring him the relief he so desperately seeks. He said, 'It's a shame, for after all their adventures together, I can't think of anyone Consuela trusts more at her side in a pinch.' I'm in." He, too, added chips to the pile. From somewhere underneath the table, a drunken voice slurred, "Don Diego, he's our man. If he can't do it," but it petered out. "Hey, there sure is a lot of chewing gum stuck here under this here table and the floor." At this point, the table was nudged, as if by someone underneath it had hit his head trying to get up. After a brief pause, the sounds of surprisingly soft snoring came from under the table. Dan said, "Cards." Dusty asked for 2. Henry asked for 3. And Paco asked for 4. Dan said he would just play with the ones he got. After everyone settled in with their new hands, Dan said, "Bets." Dusty barely glanced at her cards before producing 2 more gold coins and tossed them on the table. Forgettin Henry threw his cards down in disgust. "Damn, I need no crystal ball to tell me how this is going to end," he said, and he took a swallow from his glass. "I fooled. If only Grant could have the courage to tell Consuela why he never confesses his feelings towards her. He had so many times to tell her, like the time when they faced certain death when they were entombed in the abandoned mine shaft." Lonesome Paco saw Dusty's bet and said, "I'll see that. Sure, it was a stroke of luck that Grant had studied mining with them Cornish fellers up in the mountains back east. It's how he knew them Cornish miners always made a secret mark to show where there was a secret exit to the mine, he said, and tossed his chips into the pile. Or there was the time they was trapped up in the narrow box canyon by the flash flood, he added. Lucky chance that Grant had studied enough geology in that year he spent in the university so he could figure out exactly which way they should hightail it out of the way of the rapidly rising waters, Henry said smugly. And don't forget the time they was surrounded by them Chinese workers with a railroad, said Dan. Why, they were tied up and surrounded on all sides with sticks of blasting powder meant to blow a hole clean through a mountain. If that weren't a perfect time to unburden one's heart of a past shame, I don't know what would be. I'm in, and raised 3. And Dan added his chips to the growing pile. I'm out, said Lonesome Paco, tossing in his cards. Damn. I thought for sure they was goners in that chapter. Shoot, nobody could have imagined that Grant was a grandchild of a missionary. Sure was a fortunate turn that he'd spend all that time in the court of the Dowager Empress. He just happened to pick up a Mandarin accent once he opened his mouth to speak. Them railroad workers untied the 2 of them lickety-split and let them take the handcar down the mountain, said Lonesome Paco. That was sure a close one. That's 3 more of them pretty coins to you, miss, if you want to see what I'm holding, Handsome Dan said. He aimed another one of his handsome grins at Dusty. She paid him no mind, though, just pulled the gold coins from her pocket and tossed them on the table, her face impassive. Handsome Dan's smile spread a bit wider at the sight of all that gold. Well, that's quite a bit of money you've paid into the pot, he said with a chuckle, and all just so you can take a look at my straight. He gave a short laugh. It's a pretty little straight, I'll grant you, but I'm not sure it's that pretty, seeing how much you paid to see it. Handsome Dan reached over to scoop his winnings when Dusty turned over her cards and he froze. Full house, she said in her soft, even voice. Queens over jacks. Handsome Dan froze his hand over the pot. Thank you for the game, gents, said Dusty, as she in turn began to collect her winnings. Goddamn, no trumped up miss is gonna walk in here and take our money and whiskey. Seymour had apparently tired of sleeping with the boots and had risen, wobbling uncertainly, wiping his hands on his pants like something was sticking to him, while at the same time fumbling to open his duster and reveal his pistols. He hiccuped for emphasis. Here, here, Seymour, said Handsome Dan. No need to get all riled up. This is just a friendly game. And book discussion, added Paco. Dusty looked at Seymour, wobbling and getting distracted by whatever was sticking to his hands, and sighed. Just because a man's a fool doesn't mean he should get shot. "Hey, kid." The last was directed at the kid. "Yes, ma'am," the kid said. "Think you can find the 3 queens on the table and toss them in the air?" Dusty glanced over at Medium Mama. "The boy will be fine," she assured her. With an odd look of one remembering something from long ago, Mama said, "Do what the lady says, boy." The shoe shine kid went over to the table and picked up the 3 queens. At a slight nod from Dusty, he tossed them into the air. Still seated, Dusty pulled out the pistol from her gun belt and fired 3 times. The sound was like 3 strikes of lightning, and the folks in the bar scrambled for cover. The smoke slowly cleared, and the shoeshine boy was the one whose keen eye found the cards and brought them out for all to see. "She shot all 3, he said in an awed voice, and it was the honest truth. Each one of the queens had a bullet hole blasted right between her eyes. Seymour stared at the hold cards for a moment and then decided it were a good time to stammer out an apology. "Sorry, miss. Didn't mean nothing by it," muttered Seymour, holding his sticky hands far from his pistols. "Didn't think so," said Dusty, holstering her pistol. But any further conversation was cut short by a caterwauling that rose from the very soul of Medium Mama. "Debbie," she wailed, "oh, Debbie, you've come home again, just like you said you would." "What is it, Ma?" asked the shoeshine boy, a mite perturbed to see his mother move to all them tears. "It's my sister," said Medium Mama, "your auntie. She's been gone all these years, ever since I was your age, and I know her now. Only my sister Debbie could drink like that, play cards like that, or shoot like that." Dusty gave a sigh just in time to receive a tear-stained embrace from her little sister, all grown up now. "That's right, Mitty," she said. "I've come home." So folks say that's how Dusty met up with her family at long last. Now some folks say she just rode into Dry Gulch just like any other person riding into town, said howdy to her sister, and never fired a shot at anything or drunk whiskey. But I got this here tale straight from the horse's mouth, and ain't anyone near brave enough to call Dusty Cantina a liar to her face. Are you? Didn't think so. Let's just go with the story I got here. Safer for everyone, I reckon. Well, that's it for this episode of Due Date, the true legend of Dusty Cantina, gunslinger, librarian. Today's episode was written by Dan McLaughlin and Margaret Elland Schmitt, read by Dan McLaughlin, and produced by the fine folks at Totally Honest Productions. That's it for this time. Thanks for listening. Be sure you like us where you hear us. And until next time, bye-bye.